So that's when I began to realize I had taken things too far with fasting. Hi, I'm JT, Jared Taylor, and I make videos about longevity and other health, wellness, and fitness related topics. Today, I want to tell you why I stopped fasting. I started doing keto and intermittent fasting in 2018 because I had some problems in the Grand Canyon. I was trying to go rim to rim to rim, right? The rangers stopped me and said that my body was shutting down. I had some stomach problems and they led me to that point, and they kept me overnight for observation. So I ended up being okay, and I didn't have to take the helicopter ride out of there, right? But after that, my sole focus became training my body to become fat adapted and to have metabolic flexibility, which means that you can use both carbs and fat for energy and have the ability to switch between the two of them very quickly as needed. I believed that this would help me avoid some of the issues that I had experienced on that fateful day. And it did. Now, I started doing that not because I was trying to lose weight, but the weight dropped off, and it dropped off very quickly. It was kind of amazing. So quickly that my friend Carl was kind of a bit concerned, right? And one day we were talking about it and he said, "What about muscle mass?" I shrugged it off and I said, "I'm probably losing some, but I'm not worried about it. As long as I have enough muscle to do what I need to do in the Grand Canyon, I don't care. And besides, it'll be less weight that I have to carry up and out of the canyon." I got to the point that I was regularly doing 2 meals a day and about a 4 to 6 hour eating window every day. And sometimes it would be 1 meal a day, and I was doing all of my training fasted. You might be thinking, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if focused on longevity. A lot of people do 2 meals a day. A lot of people do 1 meal a day, and they're doing great. Dr. David Sinclair eats 1 meal a day. Isn't calorie restriction supposed to be good? Well, fasting, eating 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day is just fine if, and this is a big if you're getting enough quality nutrition, including protein. Even David Sinclair says calorie restriction without malnutrition or calorie restriction with adequate nutrition. And everyone's different. Some of us are really good at storing energy, and some of us burn it up much more quickly. If you have a high propensity for storing energy in the form of subcutaneous fat, then you have the ability to tolerate more fasting than a lean person who has a lot harder time storing energy as fat. Now, I found that even the meals that I was eating were getting smaller and smaller. I was so good at fasting and doing keto that my hunger levels were virtually zero. It's actually pretty awesome. But sometimes, and especially when you're busy and eating can sometimes be like a bit of an inconvenience, sometimes I would just skip it and be like, I don't want to do that, I'll just skip it. Now, fortunately for me, overall, my blood work was great. There are a couple of things that I need to work on, but we'll discuss that in another video. I even did a micronutrient test through Let's Get Checked, and the results were excellent. That actually made me feel pretty good. I'll put a link below in case you're interested. And you might be thinking, if your blood work was good, then what went wrong? What were you worried about? So to answer that, I need to tell you a story. I live in Arizona, and let me just tell you, the tap water is nasty. So we have drinking water delivered to our house. A lot of people do. It comes in those 5-gallon jugs, like this one. So we keep the bottles in the garage, and one day I went out to replace the empty water dispenser. I reached down to pick up one of these bottles, and it was hard. It was hard to lift and move around. I thought, I should be able to move the water bottle. But when the water bottle moves you, there's a problem. I remembered that I used to be able to curl these things with one arm. And I realized not only could I not even come close to doing that, but just picking one up and moving it around required quite a bit more effort than it ever had before. I was actually pretty shocked at how hard it was. I thought, whoa, I'm really getting weak. There was another thing that sort of haunted me. So I really like archery. One of my hobbies is making my own bows and arrows from scratch. And I knew in the back of my mind that I wasn't even able to pull my favorite bow comfortably, if at all. Now, it's a 58-pound longbow, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to pull it comfortably and shoot it well. But for me, that was just unacceptable and a little depressing. So that's when I began to realize I had taken things too far with fasting. I was 145 pounds, 11% body fat, and 5 foot 11 inches tall. And that seemed quite low, and the ratio seemed just a little bit off. I felt like at that weight, my body fat percentage should be a little bit lower. This and the fact that I was getting weaker tells me that I wasn't getting enough protein. I was losing fat, yes, and I had lost a lot of fat, but I was also losing muscle. And I had lost quite a bit. I also have to mention a critically important point, and this cannot be overstated. At that time, I also wasn't doing much strength or resistance training at all. So I was pretty good at running long distances, but I just wasn't very strong. And if you're interested in longevity and you've done even a little bit of research, you know that in general, calorie restriction is considered good for longevity, or at least drastically restricting or eliminating highly processed foods and sugar. When considering calorie restriction, we need to be careful that it's calorie restriction with adequate nutrition. Calorie restriction with adequate nutrition is good and can lead to amazing health benefits. Losing weight, reducing the chance of getting diseases, activating various longevity pathways, and, according to the research, may even slow the aging process. Calorie restriction without adequate nutrition, especially protein, can have the opposite effect. This can impair your immune system, lead to anemia, edema, muscle wasting, weakness, dizziness, irritability, lethargy, depression, and if taken too far for too long, contribute to sarcopenia. And sadly, we know that malnutrition in extreme cases can even lead to death. The extreme opposite of longevity. I wasn't really worried about all of those things that we just listed, except for muscle loss, because it was happening. And it had happened. Now, to make things worse, as we get older, muscle loss becomes a real thing. Fast twitch muscle fibers begin to atrophy much faster. You know, the muscle fibers that are responsible for power and quickness. And we have the decreased ability to synthesize protein into muscle. To put it simply, it's harder to maintain muscle, it's harder to build muscle, and when we lose it fast. And it's much harder to get back once it's gone. Believe me, it's been really hard. So, what did I do? I went back to eating 3 meals a day. And at first it was hard because I wasn't really hungry. I also decided to start cycling in more carbs, a little more fruit, some sweet potatoes here and there, and some rice occasionally. I was already eating lots of vegetables like leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables, in case you're wondering. Adding in more carbs helped my hunger levels go up. And this is a very important point. I placed a much bigger priority on strength training. Now, I ended up swinging back just a little too far the other way, and it went up to 15% body fat. I ended up getting a little too flexible with what I was eating, if you know what I mean. I basically let myself eat just a little bit too much junk. Well, you know, I faltered a little bit. I'm getting back on track. The good thing is that I also gained 2 pounds of muscle, and I feel much stronger now. I can't quite curl a 5-gallon water bottle with one arm, but it's much easier for me to move those things around. So I'm not stopping fasting or time restricted eating or calorie restriction. I'm just increasing my eating window to 8 to even 12 hours. Fasting can be an incredibly powerful tool, especially if you're trying to heal like metabolic syndrome or trying to lose a significant amount of weight. Current longevity research shows that eating less has positive benefits when it comes to aging. It can be really good. That said, we also have to remember that too much of a good thing can also be bad.